Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Afira Khairunnisa from 25 Senior High School, and welcome to our webinar. It's a precious change for me to be your host on this very special occasion, the seminar about stigma to the mental illness. First of all, let's say thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has given us guidance, happiness, healthy, and mercy, so we can attend this meeting without any obstacles. Before at all, I would like to say thank you for all of you to join this meeting and for taking a time to join in this meeting, especially for Miss Lilis Setiasih for our facilitator. And today, I would like to introduce our moderator and presenter. It has Hasya Supriatna as a moderator from 25 Senior High School. Hi, Hasya.
Hi.
And the presenter for today is Jihan Tertia Nugraha Putri from 25 Senior High School. Hi Jihan, glad to meet you.
Hi everyone.
Okay, so now I would like to let our moderator Hasya to take over this meeting.
Thank you, Afira, as our host. Okay, now let me introduce myself again. Hello, everyone. My name is Hasya Supriatna from 25 Senior High School, Bandung. I'm here as a moderator. First of all, thank you to our facilitator, Miss Lilis Setiasih, and our friends who have taken the time to attend this webinar. Today, we will have a webinar entitled Fight Negative Stigma of Mental Illness. And allow me to introduce our speaker. Her name is Jihan Tertia Nugraha Putri. Hello, Jihan.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Since in elementary school, Jihan had many achievements. She has often won several competitions and participated in organizational program in Malaysia. She also been a student council and paskibra at her junior high school. Incidentally, the title this time is very relevant to everyday life because there are still a lot of negative stigma of mental illness. Okay, now next moving along to our session, I'll let Jihan to take over the webinar.
Okay, thank you, Hasya. Okay, can we open the presentation page, please?
Is the presentation already in your screen?
It is. Put it in a presentation mode. The full mode.
Yes, for a moment.
Full screen. Okay, I'm just gonna start now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Jihan Tertia. I'm from SMAN Bandung. Today, me as a presenter, I'm going to talk and present a discussion with the title Fight Stigma, Negative Stigma of Mental Illness. Afira, can you put it on a presentation mode?
Okay, maybe it's a little bit error because in my screen it's a black color. Is this with you guys?
In my computer, it's on PowerPoint, but it's not on the full screen mode.
Okay, maybe I'm stop
no.
share and resharing ya, just for a moment.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
How about it?
Wait. Okay, it's working now. Okay, so I'm gonna start. So as I said before, I'm going to present a discussion with the title Fight Negative Stigma of Mental Illness. So let's bring to the next slide, please. So you might be wondering, what is mental illness? But before that, let me bring you to the definition of mental health. Okay, next. So before that, I'm gonna explain what is mental health. Mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to their community. Next slide. Okay, so unfortunately, not everyone is blessed with a mentally healthy or mentally well. People with mental illness and mentally ill does exist. So what happened to them? First one is unhappiness and decreased enjoyment of life, constantly having excessive fear, worry, or anxiety, problems functioning in social work or family activities, and also their brains have worked in a way which they are unable to think or act in the ways they want to. But of course, these symptoms are not a valid indication whether someone is mentally ill or not. We need a professional help to diagnose us, such as psychiatrists or psychologists, to actually diagnose whether we are mentally ill or not. But the conclusion and the point is, people with mental illness does not really function the way that other people who's mentally well does. Next slide, please. The awareness around mental health in Indonesia especially is still very small, and sometimes it's called as taboo. From years to years, there are stigma growing around this matter. What is stigma? A stigma is a mark or disgrace associated with a particular community or a person. In this case, people sees negatively towards people who has mental illness. To be more specific, stigma has two forms. The first one is self-stigma and social stigma. I'm gonna start with social stigma. Social stigma is a negative stereotypes that is given by society to people who has mental illness. But self-stigma, in fact, is when people who actually has mental illness start to believe the stigma that has been given to them. So let's say that I am mentally ill and society give me negative stereotypes that I'm scary, that I'm abusive, that I'm dangerous. And then and after that, because of the judgments of the society that comes to me, I start to believe that I'm actually dangerous and I'm actually abusive, which the truth is I'm not. Next slide, please. Okay, so there is three components of stigma. The first one is stereotype. There is stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. So what is stereotype? Stereotype is overgeneralized ideal or belief towards a community or a person. Stereotype does not only applies in this matter. Actually, there's a lot of stereotypes, like where you come from, like your ethnicity or your race. There's a lot of stereotypes. But in this case, it's like it's negative because, for example, the stereotypes that used to be given to people who's mentally ill is that they are dangerous, that they're uncontrollable, that they're incompetent, and they're weak. And the second one is prejudice. Prejudices happen as a form of agreement of the stereotypes that causes emotional reaction. So people who has this prejudice against people who's mentally ill is they believe that these stereotypes are true. So they reacted emotionally, such as feeling scared, feeling disgusted, feeling angry, or not trusting them. The third one is discrimination. Discrimination is a final response or action from stereotype and prejudice. So this has come up as a bullying or not letting them to live and socialize around us, or it can be like not giving them a chance and the same opportunities to grow as a person, etc. And there's a lot. And this internalized stigma actually can affect people who has mental illness, such as they are lowering their self-worth, they're losing hope, doubting their capabilities, they're doubting the process of getting help and heal and recover. Okay, next slide. So how and why that this stigma is exists and going around for years? The main root and the main cause is lack of information and education. Because when people are clueless about something, they tend to react the wrong way, confused or scared and questioning themselves. And but again, that is actually kind of normal because that's what humans do when we're new to something. But again, this whole stigma, negative stigma and stereotypes towards these people is, of course, it's because lack of education. We're so new to this matter. We never really get taught in school about this. And when we see people with these real problems, we tend to get scared and like, is that exist? We're so confused, and that's normal. But again, it should not be normal. It should be something that we actually know and aware of. Next slide. Another important point is how stigma is also because of how big media role is. Media creates the image of people with mental illness and it's impacting how society views them. From years ago, media create an image and negative perspective and resulting to discrimination and stereotypes towards these people. For example, when there's a news about people with schizophrenia or who is mentally ill and homeless, or we call it ODGJ, orang dengan gangguan jiwa, that we often see on the streets, you know what I'm talking about, that we often said orang gila, right? Media portrays them as if they're dangerous or they're abusive. They like to kidnap kids because do you guys remember when we were a kid when we see people with homeless that seems like a little bit weird? We're so scared, right? We sometimes run or like, oh, it's orang gila, or oh, it's orang gila. That's what we often used to say ever since we're a kid. So it's the truth that we also used to give this stereotype to these people when in fact they actually need help, and it's not accurate that they're abusive. It's not the point at all. Turns out public and society would think that these stereotypes are true, and people who have mental illness generally is abusive, generally is scary, and like to kidnap people. And media sometimes exaggerating the news about people with mental illness, maybe not exaggerating, but they're only highlighting the point where these people are being abusive. Maybe it is actually the behavior that they have, but that's the point. They're only highlighting the point, not educating the actual public about what is really the behavior that they have that is not true, whether it's untrue or not. Okay, in conclusion, it's just an overgeneralization about this matter. Okay, next slide. Okay, there's actually a term that I said before, orang gila, that we often give to people who is like on the street, that is like hallucinating or like they're homeless, that we often see. I know you guys often see them. And a clinical psychologist, Tarada Towers, once said that this stigma is too extreme and too judgmental. This term associated with abusive, attacking, and like to kidnap people. In the end, is resulting society to be scared to be around them and also to help them. You might see a lot of news where people get attacked by this orang gila on the street, but in fact, so many people said that people that actually called orang gila is even more scared of us than we're scared of them. They're scared of us because in most cases, normal people like us is often the one who actually start to abuse them. Like kids sometimes throw rocks at them or running or mocking them, and that's why they're being defensive. But again, how media portrays them is as if they're the one who being abusive, when in fact we're the one that being abusive first towards them. Okay, next slide. I have an example of how media plays a big role in this case. In 2009, there is an actress and a singer, Marchanda. She was known because she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And at the same year, she has a video went viral of her screaming and shouting and singing. And she was shouting her bully's name back in elementary school. And at the time, how media and people react to that video was very poor because people associate this crazy behavior with her being diagnosed of bipolar disorder. When in fact, 10 years later, in 2019, she spoke up and she says that that video 10 years ago has nothing to do with her being bipolar. And in fact, that's not the behavior that bipolar people would do. So in conclusion, what I can take from this little case is that we're so uneducated about this matter that we associating this crazy behavior with people being mentally ill. Well, in fact, if we're educated and we know what is actually mental illness and what is actually the symptoms, we would know that these are not crazy behavior, and it's just her expressing her feelings when she was a teenager, just like any of us when we're singing and we're screaming and we're pouring our heart out, and this is what she does back in the day. So that's really sad, and that is the example of the case. Okay, next slide. And these are the example of offensive comments that sometimes people gave when people with mental illness open up about their condition. You're not religious enough. You're seeing a psychologist. You're weird. You're just weak. It's not that big of a deal. My problems is huger than you. Your problem is nothing compared to mine. And these comments are really rude and really disrespectful, because I guarantee when someone open up about their condition, it took for them a lot of courage, because imagine like the stigma and the stereotypes around them in real life is already huge, as I said before. So it must take a lot of courage and take a lot of nerve for them to open up, and the least that we want to do is invalidating their problems, saying these such things. And the least that we can do is encouraging them, motivating them, and saying that they're not alone and they're going to be fine. Next slide. So how does the stigma affecting the survivors? The first one is self-destructive behavior. So what is self-destructive behavior? This can come off such as when people are hurting themselves, like they do the cutting. You guys might seen people who's mentally ill does that, or banging their head on the door, on the walls, or try to kill themselves, suicide. And the second one is stopping survivors from getting a professional help. This all is a cycle, because when you're scared of the judgments from the society towards you, you're gonna get scared to getting a help, because people would say that you're crazy, people would say that you're just weak. So of course, you're gonna get scared to admit that you need help. The third one is worsen their mental health problems. Of course, when you're already mentally ill, you're scared to go to professional help. Of course, what else gonna outcome is your mental health are not getting healed. It's gonna get worse. And the fourth one is, in conclusion, stigma and discrimination can trap people in a cycle of illness, because nothing is getting healed, nothing is working. You're ill, you don't get any help because of the stigma, and you got worse, and then it's all just gonna be a cycle and never ending cycle. Next slide. So what can we do? There is 3 strategies that people believe that would work into breaking the stigma. The first one is protest. It sometimes get done by a media organization. There's a lot of mentally based organizations that have been going around in Indonesia for a long time, where they do protests. These, like someone, like a demonstration that you might see like in front of the national building. And the second one is educate. So many people said that this is the most effective strategy to break the stigma. Why? Because as I said before, when people are clueless and uneducated about something, they tend to react the wrong way and not the way that they should. So this is the reason why so many people are clueless about something. And when people are uneducated and they get educated, they will understand perspective better, they will understand things better, and even after that, they actually can help us to stop the stigma. And the third one is a contact. It's like a testimony or a meeting. It can be like when people who's mentally ill meet people who actually don't, and they work together, they interact, they study together, they build a friendship. These will actually break the stigma and actually understanding, because both parties can understand what does it feel like to live like each other. In this case, when people who's normal, not having a mental illness, meet people who are actually mentally ill, they would understand that, oh my God, this stigma that has been going around and I've heard of is never true. It's always a false, and it's not true at all. And they can still work, they can still interact with me well, they can handle themselves, they're controllable, and they're capable of growing as a person. And the second one example is like there's a lot of celebrities, huge successful celebrities, who already open up about them being mentally ill, such as Marshanda, as I said before, or Ariel Tatum. There's a lot. And what this do to the society is for them to understand that even if them with mental illness does not affecting them to stop growing and be successful person, because everyone can be successful regardless. And society would perceive like, oh, she's successful, she's amazing, they're doing whatever they like, they're making their life, they're being so effective to other people, even if with their condition. So in conclusion, their condition does not stopping them or make it seem like it's gonna stop them for growing and not capable of doing what they want to do. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are what to do when you are a part of people with mental illness and you are facing this stigma. The first one is don't isolate yourself, because when you're mentally ill, you only want to please just surround yourself with people who you trust and who you love. And the second one is your mental health come first. When you're mentally ill and you're facing the stereotypes that people has been given to you, the least you want to do is care about that. The least you want to do is for you to, correcting people that I'm not like that, or like that's not true. You just don't want to care about that. Let that business is just to us. You don't have to take care of it. You should only care about your mental health. And the third one is educate yourself more. This will work because when you don't even know about what happened to you, you don't understand what's wrong with you. You tend to also, you don't help yourself. You don't get the right solution for you. So educating yourself can bring you to understand yourself better, understand your situation better. And the fourth one is critical. Be critical. It's important too, because in social media, there's a lot of information that we see that are not true, or make us overthink, or make us feel like a burden, or make us feel like scared. So really sorting the right and the wrong news about mental illness is very important as well, to be more critical. Okay, next slide. Okay, in conclusion is don't let the stigma make you doubt. I know that it must be hard for anyone to live with mental illness and with the stigma around them that not supporting them. But please remember that we have to be sure for ourselves. We have to contribute. Not only people whose mental illness have to have so much sureness inside them, but we are a society, we have to help them more to get the help that they needed to make a better place and safe world for them. Because I'm really glad that these days there's a lot of recognition towards people who's mentally ill, and I want to encourage you guys to do this together with me and with other people who's very open about this matter, to let's create a safe and better world for them, because who else gonna do it? And let's just keep on moving on and don't let the stigma make you doubt. Thank you.
Okay, that's the explanation from Jihan of negative stigma of mental illness. And I 100% agree that the negative stigma of mental illness is is too judgmental and too extreme. And the negative stigma should be erased. Now we will start the question and answer session. So if you guys has a question, you can go directly via chat or raise your hand first. There's a question from Miss Lilis Setiasih. Jihan, would you prefer to collect the question first or answer it now?
Okay, I'm just gonna answer it now.
Okay, I'll read the question. The question from Miss Lilis Setiasih is how we can recognize mental illness.
Okay. There's actually a question above them. Is if we meet our friends, like showing off, seek excessive attention, is he or she suffering mental illness, and how we can recognize mental illness? So I feel what I understand from the first question is if we meet a person or a friend that seems like only doing it for attention, I guess. Is that how it meant? We meant her like showing off. Is it actually is he or she suffering mental illness? So of course I cannot speak for diagnosed like psychiatrists or psychologists because I'm so far from professional. But how can we recognize mental illness? So there's a lot of symptoms. People who has mental illness, we can be more aware of our friendship. Even like just we don't have to be like all of our classmates or something. We can be like our closest friends or our closest family. We can see and educating ourselves about whether someone is ill or not, or is that like a changing behavior in them, like they tend to be more quiet, they're pushing themselves away from the social life, or they feels like like there's a sign of depression where people like tend to not socialize and they don't really take care of themselves, like they don't really take a bath, they don't sleep well, or they spend so many sleeps every day. And that could be a symptoms of whether someone is mentally ill or not. But in general, when you notice a changing behavior from your friends or family, I think it's better for us to check up on them regularly, because when you're not mentally ill, like even when you're like feeling sad or feeling alone, it's felt so nice when someone when someone asks you like, are you okay, do you need help, are you been feeling well or not. It feels so good for me to have someone who's comforting me. And I feel like in these cases too, because we can't really recognize whether someone is mentally ill or not, because I feel like diagnose is a psychiatrist and psychologist's job, and that's why I never encourage people to self-diagnose. So yeah, if I think if we see our friend seek attention or like showing symptoms of mental illness, just the least that we can do is just check ups on them and ask if they're okay, and if they're comfortable to open up to us with the condition, you can actually like I'm sorry for the background noise. You can actually suggest them to seek professional help. I think that's for me.
Okay, that's the
Thank you,
answer.
Jihan.
You're
Your
welcome.
explanation is impressive for me. I think you be born in England. You're very fluent in English.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer, Jihan.
Goodness, you're welcome.
Do you guys still have a question?
Naila, how about you? would you give us one answer, one question maybe? Naila?
Maybe I'll go first ya. I just want to sharing with you, Jihan, Hasya, and Naila, and Miss Lilis about sometimes people feel like she or they, just for a moment.
Okay.
Like someone diagnose they in bahasa, dia kena sendiri gitu, dia merasa dia kena penyakit tersebut. Menurut Jihan, what if someone labeled himself mental illness? How about you?
Okay. Okay, there's also an effect because of the awareness around this matter is pretty huge in Indonesia. Even though it's not perfect, not everyone aware of it, but there's a lot of organizations who speak up about this. And one of the effects of the awareness around this is because people sometimes sees it as a trend, which is it's not a trend at all. It's people really struggling with this, and to call it as a trend is very disrespectful. And sometimes there's people do this only because of they want to seem like they're cool, or you get me. And these people are very dangerous because they tend to romanticize this issue, which is it's not great. And this is called glorification, where people glorified this condition as if something that is trendy or cool, when in fact people are dying because of this. So it's not funny and it's not cool at all. And as I said before, it's not okay to self-diagnose. It's not okay at all to self-diagnose. And if we think that we need someone and we need help, what the most effective things for us to do is seek actually professional help, because how else we would know if we're ill or not if we don't actually go to professional help that actually knows about our condition. So I think about that question, Afira, it's not cool at all to self-diagnose because it's wrong. It's called glorification and we should stop it. That's it.
So for this case, we can't self-diagnose, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for your answer.
Welcome.
Okay, is there a question? Okay, it's already 30 minutes, and today's discussion is very useful for all of us because we are increasingly aware of the negative stigma of mental illness and mental illness itself. Like Jihan said, don't let the negative stigma make you doubt. Don't let them make you scared to go to a psychology or psychiatric. Just remember, there are still a lot of people that always support you and care about you. So please don't be scared to go to a psychology or psychiatry. We should priority ourselves first. Now I'll let our host, Afira, to take over the webinar.
Thank you, Hasya. And wow, that's a wonderful presentation, explanation, and a nice question for today. Well, that's wrap up our event. Thank you for coming, guys. We hope that this event gives you more insight and more knowledge. Don't forget to submit your attendance. I just dropped the links on the chat section. And once again, thank you for coming. And I wish you give a pleasant day and keep your health protocols. See you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.